Black American wealth gaps, generation wealth, just words to some and dismissed arguments for others who hold to they should have worked harder, like successful minority groups in America. Despite the demand for knowing Black history, our political leaders and educators dismiss the truths that are fundamental to Black economic conditions in America today. They resist and dismiss repairs to their errors. Consider this article, White Supremacy Campaign of 1898, a stain that will not escape history experts. I'm Addie Banks, and this is my report. ABC News, March 25th, 2024. White Supremacy Campaign of 1898, a stain that will not escape history experts. On November 10, 1898, more than 2,000 white supremacists in Wilmington, North Carolina, ransacked a Black-owned newspaper, Black-owned banks, and forced the city's local leaders, which included a mix of white and Black elected officials, to resign in what historians call the only successful coup in U.S. history. Now, historians, residents, and descendants of the victims are working to ensure that the one of the darkest days in Wilmington's history doesn't remain lost and forgotten. While the city has been working to identify and honor the victims of insurrection who lost everything, some of their descendants, like Inez Campbell Eason, say more needs to be done to rectify the sins of the past. Quote, I was really angry. I used to cry all the time, like angry, fiery, angry tears, because this is generational wealth that was taken away from my family, she told ABC News. Campbell Eason said she only found out a few years ago about the insurrection and how her great great grandfather, Isom Quick, was evicted from town banks that he successfully managed. Campbell Eason was visiting a museum that had hired a Black curator who pulled out old records about her ancestor. Campbell Eason said she learned Quick, a freed slave, joined the board of directors for Wilmington's first Black-owned bank, the Perpetual Savings and the People's Perpetual Savings and Loan in 1887. He ended up owning 3 banks in Wilmington, and records show he had at least $2 million in holdings. His 2 white business partners took over the banks after he was forced out during the coup, she said. Historians said that such economic success among Black Wilmington residents was not uncommon during the end of the 19th century. Many of these entrepreneurs worked with white business owners, according to historians. The city's elected officials was also made up of former slaves and white men. Quote, it was basically a Black Mecca of the South, Campbell Eason said. That integrated coalition, however, did not sit well with white supremacists across the state, who were already making efforts to limit Black business ownership and promote the passage of Jim Crow laws, according to historian LaRae Unfleet, a state historian, told ABC News that white supremacists took aim at the Wilmington city election of 1898 to further their agenda, and their campaign led to the coup. Tensions rose in August of that year when white Wilmington newspapers ran a racist speech from the year before by Rebecca Latimer Felton of Georgia. Said, essentially, that article said all Black men have one thing that they want to do in life, and that's to rape white women. And so we need to do everything we can to protect white womanhood. And if that means lynching a Black man today, then she says lynch. Alex Manley, the editor of one of the city's Black-owned newspapers, responded to the speech with an editorial. Quote, he essentially said that white women choose to be with Black men, and that was an insult to white leadership, that a white woman would choose to be with a Black man. So he became a target. A week after white supremacist candidates won the election, Alfred Moore Waddell, a former Confederate soldier, led a group of men with torches and burned Manley's newspaper office. Historians said the mob grew and they raided City Hall, where they violently threw out racially diverse city leaders who still had another year in office and forced them to resign from their positions. Waddell then became the mayor. An estimated 300 Black residents were murdered during the incident, historians said. Those who fled the violent mob, who historians say used a Gatling gun on Black residents and businesses during the coup, took shelter inside churches and a segregated cemetery until it was safe to go outside. I will add that many Black businesses, churches, institutions, and homes were burned. This was an effort to drive out Black residents. The many Blacks who did abandon Wilmington left behind their assets, their family wealth, which was taken over by white residents. This story was left out of history books and local lore for over a century. African Americans did not talk about that. You know, they were kind of told not to talk about it. And so it kind of went underground. This said by genealogist Tim Pinnock to ABC News. But it's kind of like critical race theory. If we don't talk about it, then we don't have to deal with it. But in recent years, the city has worked to rectify this problem. It has set up makeshift tombstones of the people killed in the event. A school that was named after one of the white supremacist perpetrators of the coup was renamed to Mason Borough Elementary. Pinnock has been using DNA databases to find the descendants of the victims who were across the country, and he spread the word about what happened. We're going to keep finding people because that's what our mission is now, he said. But some Black residents say more needs to be done to undo the century of damage done to this community. Campbell Eason said she would like to see the properties of her ancestor, those owned by her ancestors return to her and her family or some other financial reparation. She dismisses arguments that taxpayers today should not pay for past crimes, saying yesterday's crimes helped this country to amass the wealth that it has today. My fellow Americans, this is also American history, a history that can teach us how to frame getting along today and reveal how these practices continue in the 21st century. Taking, disrespecting, and disregarding, all in the name of wealth building. We must learn that there is increased evidence of hate crimes in America and why. Is this about notions of supremacy, regardless of race and ethnic group? We witness a lack of respect for foundational citizens and then wonder why we're not getting along. Newcomers to any nation should be taught the history of who people are. In America, Black history shared will enlighten them that they need to respect Black Americans, not fear and avoid them. Reparations for ADOS, American descendants of slavery, is a hot issue, especially when the focus is on large checks for people who were not slaves. There have been repair programs for many groups, including Native Americans who were not alive when their native land was taken. To me, fairness should be the American way. We support seekers of better lives. That is also the history of America. But when a system is poorly managed and it inadvertently hurts other Americans, we must weigh the moral fortitude of love for all groups and denial of love for others. There should be a do no harm to others while seeking your dreams foundation.